Good morning. This morning we are talking about compassion. And I've been thinking about one of my favorite books, Beyond Courage, in which the author asks a series of questions that lead us into thinking about what it means to live a courageous life with our hearts open to compassion. And these are rhetorical questions. You don't have to answer them out loud, but to explore them with me. He asks, have you ever been so sick that you lost your courage? Have you ever been so emotionally chaotic or so unhappy that you even thought about ending your own life? Have you ever been so poor that you didn't know where your next meal was going to come from or where you were going to sleep? Or have you ever had someone close to you hurt, either on purpose or accidentally? Have you ever lost someone precious to you? Or have you witnessed someone else close to you going through these things, or have you witnessed it from a distance, watched it taking place in your own community, in your neighborhood? The chances are that you and I have met suffering, either face to face in our own lives or witnessed it in someone else. These are the experiences, most likely, that qualify us to be compassionate beings. Compassion is when we can identify with, even feel the suffering of others, along with the desire to lessen or even end that suffering. And being compassionate with ourselves, it turns out, can be even more challenging than being compassionate with others. I've been thinking about some of the teaching here at the Center for Spiritual Living, and we have this one teaching that says that no matter what is going on, that we are, spiritually speaking, whole, perfect, and complete. And that can be difficult, holding those two ideas. It can be difficult being compassionate with ourselves when the whole, perfect, and complete of the spiritual inside doesn't match what is going on the outside. It might go something like this. I'm whole, perfect, and complete. And yet I make choices sometimes, often, that end up being mistakes. I'm whole, perfect, and complete. And sometimes I mess up terribly. And I hurt myself. And sometimes I hurt other people. And sometimes it's accidentally, and sometimes it's intentionally. I'm whole and perfect and complete. And sometimes I just miss the mark. I do less than I can. I do less than I ought to. I do less than I wanted to. And I notice that I'm not always very forgiving or compassionate with myself when my outer life doesn't match my inner spiritual truth. And I've been wondering if the way we show compassion for ourselves and the way we show compassion for other people, are they connected? I confess that when other people mess up, I don't always go in my thinking to they are whole, perfect, and complete. And when I mess up, I don't always in my thinking go to my spiritual wholeness. My thinking can be pretty toxic and self-critical. It is all connected. How I treat others and how I treat myself. And there's room for improvement, and I think we can work on both at the same time. It doesn't really matter where we start. More compassion to others may help me be more compassionate to myself, and vice versa. So I want to explore that from both sides today and explore what there may be that can open the doors of our compassionate hearts. So let's explore some more questions. I invite you to think about a time when you messed up. You know, when you got yourself into trouble. And what was it like for you? And what did you need from people at that time? And if there was somebody there for you who believed in you when you couldn't even believe in yourself, what was that like? What did they do? And what about from the other side? When other people mess up? You know, have you ever heard gossip about someone messing up? You know, or you know about a colleague or a neighbor or a friend or a public image getting into trouble. How did you deal with it in your thinking? Were you able to maintain the highest thought about them? And what do you think they needed from the people around them? And was there somebody who stood with them, who believed in them when they couldn't believe in themselves? You know, a long time ago, when I messed up, it wasn't just the one time, but I'm remembering that one time. You know, I messed up and I asked my mentor at the time, I said, what should I do to get through this? And she said to me, you know, Edward, before you even get to the what you should do, first, surround yourself with dolphins and not with sharks. And I've never forgotten that. She said, because if you're bleeding, the sharks will eat you alive. But the dolphins will accompany you until you are safe again. And I've never, ever forgotten that. I understand it because when I'm full of the energy of guilt, you know that guilt energy, it demands punishment. It's bleeding. It's like bleeding. So who are the sharks? Well, they aren't bad people. They're likely just the people who are reflecting back to me something that I already do to myself and to other people. Feed on their guilt. And it's not helpful. That's how you know when you're being a shark for someone. When you feed on their guilt. You know, that's like maybe you want to know more of the dirty details, even more than what you need to know. Maybe that's like when you're afraid that what's happened to them will happen to you, so you kind of have this push-pull relationship with it. Or maybe it's when you're feeling even glad that they're getting their comeuppance. You know you're being a dolphin for someone when what they did cannot change your mind about who they are spiritually. And you don't need to know what happened. And if you do know what happened, you realize it's not about whether or not you approve of it, and you don't need to agree or disagree with it, that your heart message to them is, I will stand with you so that you don't have to face this alone. Compassion is not pity. Compassion is to stand with someone in their experience. The Spirit in you recognizes the Spirit in them. So first, I learned from my mentor, surround yourself with dolphins. And who the dolphins are in your life, I think, make become clearer to you a little later on in this message. The second thing that we can do to open up the compassionate heart center in us and in those people around us is to stop the bleeding. And one way of doing that is to say sorry when you've made a mistake. Make amends quickly and as safely as possible, which means if doing so causes further harm, don't do it. There is a website, verywellmind.com. And on it there is an article about the importance of apologizing by Elizabeth Scott. And she says, many people have complicated feelings about apologies, and not all of our thoughts and feelings about apologies line up. Some of us were forced to apologize as children when we hurt someone, and some of us apologized freely and felt immediately better after having done so. Some people feel shamed by apologizing, while others feel ashamed until they apologize. A popular movie, she writes, from decades ago declared that love means never having to say I'm sorry. While many relationship experts warn us that never apologizing in a relationship, and I say in life, is a sure way to risk losing everything. She talks in her article about positive outcomes for giving a sincere apology, and later she emphasizes what a sincere apology is. It's very important, right? She says, we may have learned about the need for apologizing when we've hurt a friend, accidentally or otherwise, but do you know why apologizing is really important and what function a good apology serves? Researchers and psychologists have pinpointed some important reasons why apology is necessary, like when social rules have been violated, because there are some good things that can come from apologies. You may know them already. Number one, she says, apologizing when you have broken a rule of social conduct, like cutting in front of somebody in the line, as small as that. What it does is it reestablishes that you know what the rules are and that you agree that they ought not to be broken. And this can allow other people to feel safe around you, knowing that you agree that hurtful behavior isn't okay. Secondly, she said, apologies can reestablish dignity for the people you've hurt. Letting the injured party know that you know it was your fault, not theirs, can help them feel better, and it can help them save face. Thirdly, she says, apologizing helps repair relationships because it gets people talking again and can help introduce comfort where people can be with each other again. And the fourth one, she says, a sincere apology, it allows people to know you're not proud of what you did and you won't be repeating the behavior. That, she writes, lets people know you're the kind of person who is generally careful not to hurt others, and it puts the focus on your better values, what you stand for, redirecting it away from what you did in error. Now, another way of saying all of this is confess. Oh, yeah. Especially if what you're dealing with is bigger than just one person or just one offense. And what do I mean by confess? I mean share your burden. Unburden your heart. My grandmother used to say, a burden shared is a burden halved. I've never forgotten that. And if you grew up Catholic like I did, and if you loved your Catholic upbringing like I did, then maybe you will remember the tremendous unburdening power of sharing your mistakes, your errors, and then following that up with spiritual practice and prayer. Now, at the center, we don't have the confessional. We don't have that. But we do have practitioners. And maybe you have a prayer partner. Or maybe you have a spiritual best friend. These are your dolphins. Someone you can safely and sanely share your heart with. Because it's not for everyone. And unburdening your heart dissolves some of the tension, and it can be an act of self-compassion. And it's also good for the person who is hearing the confession. And by the way, there is a special way of listening to confession. We'll deal with that later. But think of dolphins again, non-attacking, supporting. Now, if you're new here and you don't know what that word practitioner is, let me take a moment to describe the work they do. They are dolphins accompanying us through the service. You see them sitting on the walls in prayer while we are having service. They are the ones who come up on the stage and lead us in the affirmative prayer, the spiritual mind treatment. And they volunteer after service in the chapel. You can go in there and spend 5 minutes saying what is on your mind, saying what it is you feel you need prayer for, and then they will pray with you. And you can get the experience of somebody totally listening to you and then supporting you. It's a free service. And the other way that practitioners work is that they make themselves available for hire on a fee-for-service basis for one-on-one, face-to-face spiritual coaching sessions. And most practitioners offer a sliding scale for people having economic challenges, and some of them even will accept a service equivalent. In other words, they will work with you to get you the coaching you need. And how do you choose a practitioner? Very much like you would choose a physician or a coach or a dentist. You got to try them out. You can do that after service on Sundays. You can also interview them because all of their business cards are up on the wall next to the coffee service. You can call them and ask them about fee structure, about what you can expect from a session with them. The other side of confessing is listening. And you and I, we don't have to be trained professionals to listen. However, there is a way to listen compassionately. I'm remembering something a colleague said to me that helped me understand what compassionate listening might be like. He said, Edward, people don't need your opinions. They don't need your judgment. They probably don't even need your advice and good ideas. What they need your love. They need you to listen. They need to be seen and known and witnessed. They need you to know that they are whole, perfect, and complete, no matter what is going on the outside. Made me think, about difficult times in my life and how much I wanted during those times to be listened to. I needed it, just to have someone hear me out. And then when someone did, I felt like I had received compassion. I felt like I had been cared for. I felt like I'd been helped. And I felt more peaceful and safer. Listening carefully to other people, it turns out, builds connections. Listening increases understanding. Listening activates caring. Listening inspires courage. And it also produces a deep, soulful inner peace, both in the one listening and the one listened to. I'm remembering my own training at the Center for Spiritual Living to become a practitioner. I loved learning everything about it. I especially loved learning how to listen. Listen. So simple, so obvious, so effective. So when I became a practitioner and offered myself for one-on-one spiritual coaching, I practiced my new learned skill. I listened. And do you know, people would write to me often after the sessions, telling me how very much I had helped them when all I really did was listen. And while they talked, I tried to remember that there is something in them that is whole and perfect and complete, and that remains that way through every step of their journey. I learned to say to people in those sessions, tell me everything. Start at the beginning. Take as much time as you like. Don't leave out a single detail. And they would go like this. I had to choose to be interested. Now, I learned that practitioner skill at the Center for Spiritual Living. But when I think about it, I also learned it much earlier from my grandmother. If ever I had a broken heart, which I did every other week, or some insurmountable problem, I would go to her because I knew if I visited her, she would listen. Not just listen, she would listen attentively, nodding frequently with understanding, expressing appropriate agreement with my outrage or indignation or whatever it was. And her response was always the same, regardless of the seriousness of the problem, regardless of the impossibility of the situation. Her one simple response was almost always, it will all work out in the end. It always does. And there were times when that response would be very frustrating to me. But thinking back now, I can see how I so much preferred her non-fixing response to my life issues. I preferred it over the advice of many well-meaning metaphysical friends who would sometimes say, have you tried this? Have you tried that? Have you thought this? Have you changed your mind? Have you gone? She knew that I was whole. So my question and my challenge for you, for us this week is this. Here's the question. Do you try to fix other people when they talk to you about their difficulties? How might it be for you, for us this week, if we offered no advice, no opinion about anything, and listened instead, while trying to connect with and remember that the being in front of me, regardless of outward appearances, continues to be spiritually whole and perfect and complete. I invite you to take a breath in with me and to sigh, letting your eyes close as we enter into a moment of prayer, turning our attention to that source, the divine that is everywhere present, the eternal living Spirit. And I reflect upon this phrase, everywhere present. To me it means right here where I am. Inside of me, above me, below me, before me. And I take that to be true for every single person in this auditorium. So even as I speak this word of prayer for myself, I understand that it is for everyone. I'm accepting the idea that I move and breathe and have my being in the divine. And so I realize mindfully and respectfully that what passes through my mind now as this prayer is powerful and creative. And so I mindfully think about an outcome in which all of us have opened up our compassionate centers and are connecting with each other, spirit to spirit, heart to heart, more and more. And I'm remembering the biblical teaching that says it is God's good pleasure to reveal to us the kingdom. And so, holding gently this vision of a world in which we are compassionately connected to each other, I began to celebrate in advance, knowing that every moment from now on takes us a step closer to realizing a peaceable kingdom, a world that works a little better for everyone. And together we say, and so it is. I invite you to breathe in deeply with me and to sigh.